Chapter 251. The moment Qiye spoke these words, the old man's face instantly changed. In a flash, his eyes transformed into the primordial vastness of the heavens and the earth, shining boundlessly. His pair of eyes seemed capable of absorbing all of creation and refining the 9 worlds, with divine spirits even being conceived within them. The sudden brilliance of the old man's eyes caused everyone's expression to change drastically. Even the ancient saints inhaled sharply, involuntarily taking a step back. In that instant, everyone understood that this old man was not to be provoked. He was unfathomably profound. But very quickly, the old man's gaze dimmed again, and he reverted to his hazy appearance. He squinted his eyes, looked at Qiye, and then slowly said, "Little fellow, your ambition is quite something." Qiye remained at ease, smiling as he said, "My appetite is always very big. But there's no need to harbor any other intentions. There is nothing in this world that I cannot stomach. You can consider it, I'm not pressuring you to buy or sell." The old man couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Clearly, he hesitated. The people present did not know what the starry sky heavenly plate mentioned by Qiye was, but the old man's initial offerings were a great sage artifact and a great sage longevity artifact. His current hesitation was sufficient proof that the heavenly plate was absolutely extraordinary. Qiye lightly patted the stone chest and said leisurely, "If you want to acquire the item inside, how can you not pay a price? If you miss this chance, I'm afraid no one else will be able to open it." The old man was silent for a moment. Finally, he made a decision and said, "Fine. You good for nothing, I'll take a loss this time. As long as you can open the stone chest, the 6 beasts formation diagram is yours, and the starry sky heavenly plate is yours too." With that, he took out an ancient box from his embrace and placed it on the ground. Qiye pushed the ancient box open. Immediately, boundless starlight surged out from within. The starlight shone into the sky, seemingly transforming into an endless starry void, with winding star rivers, and the sun and moon rising and setting, a multitude of phenomena. The moment the ancient box was closed, the phenomenon instantly vanished. Although no one clearly saw what the starry sky heavenly plate looked like, seeing such a phenomenon, everyone immediately understood that the so-called starry sky heavenly plate was absolutely extraordinary. "It is indeed the starry sky heavenly plate," Qiye said, very satisfied, and slowly nodded. The old man squinted, looking at Qiye, and slowly said, "Little fellow, it's your turn. Just don't let your big talk shatter the heavens. If you can't open the stone chest, be careful, or this old man will knock all your teeth out." "That is of no concern." Qiye smiled. With that, he reached out his hand and gently caressed the stone chest. He caressed it extremely lightly, as if stroking his lover's shoulder. "Humph. Even if you rub it 10,000 times, you won't be able to open this stone chest," someone who was displeased seeing Qiye stroking the chest said with a cold laugh. But Qiye ignored him. He squatted down and began whispering softly beside the stone chest, as if murmuring into a lover's ear. No one clearly heard what he whispered. Crack! A crisp sound rang out. Just as Qiye stood up, the inconceivable happened, the stone chest actually opened. In an instant, the entire area fell completely silent. Everyone was in disbelief, their eyes wide open. The stone chest that even an imperial rune couldn't open, had it just opened so simply? What is that? At this moment, someone with sharp eyes saw a small golden coffin lying inside the stone chest. Seeing such a thing, someone was immediately dumbfounded. Everyone had thought the chest contained some world-shaking treasure, but instead, it was a small golden coffin. The old man was quick and swift, instantly stuffing the small golden coffin into his embrace. His demeanor was like a protective deity tightly guarding his gold, as if afraid someone would snatch it away. Many people didn't get a clear look at the small golden coffin, but it was already tucked into the old man's embrace. No one dared to tell him to take it out for a look. For a moment, countless people's hearts were itching with curiosity. They desperately wanted to know what was inside that small golden coffin, but since the old man wasn't speaking, there was no way for anyone else to know. After a long while, The old man finally secured his small golden coffin. His aged eyes widened, staring intently at Qiye, and he also said in disbelief, "How can this be?" By now, Qiye had weighed the 6 beasts, formation diagram and the ancient box in his hand. He glanced at the old man and said calmly, "Nothing is impossible, because I am Qiye." This ordinary sentence made even Li Xuangan and Chen Baojiao exchange glances. This was perhaps the most self-assured statement in the world. All the most bold words in the world couldn't compare to the simple phrase, "I am Qiye." In fact, not just the old man, but everyone felt this was inconceivable and couldn't help but stare at Qiye. The stone chest that even an imperial rune couldn't open was easily opened by Qiye. Such a thing was simply impossible. Yet, the truth was laid bare before their eyes. Even if they didn't believe it, they couldn't deny it. This event was utterly bizarre. Qiye smiled, retreated, and weighed the 2 items in his hand. He was somewhat satisfied. He hadn't expected to have such a harvest. However, thinking of the small golden coffin, he let out a soft sigh. "Taoist friend, how about selling the starry sky heavenly plate to me?" As Qiye stepped back, Ji Kongjian asked in a deep voice. Qiye didn't even twitch an eyelid, saying, "It's a private item. Not for sale." Ji Kongjian was persistent, saying, "As long as Taoist friend names a price, there is nothing my sky-trampling mountain cannot afford. If Taoist friend is willing to sell, the price will surely satisfy you." Not selling. Qiye was simply too lazy to talk much with Ji Kongjian, and he handed the 6 beasts formation diagram and the starry sky heavenly plate to Li Xuangan. "Why the immediate refusal, Taoist friend? You should think about it," Ji Kongjian said in a deep voice. "Forming a good relationship with my sky-trampling mountain will be very beneficial for your future." It was only then that Qiye looked up, glanced at Ji Kongjian, and slowly said, "So what if it's sky-trampling mountain? If I don't want to sell it, forget sky-trampling mountain. Even if your Mount Chizhu showed up, I wouldn't sell it. If you're unhappy, bite me." Qiye's words instantly made Ji Kongjian's face darken. Many people present couldn't help but exchange glances. This brat was too brazen, daring to offend even sky-trampling mountain. Humph. Finally, Ji Kongjian let out a cold snort and turned to leave. Although his heart was burning with rage. As someone from an imperial lineage, he couldn't possibly force a purchase under the watchful eyes of everyone. After all, sky-trampling mountain had a reputation to uphold. Alas, what a pity. Seeing the pie that fell from the sky be claimed by someone else, many people sighed and dispersed. Some, however, had cold light flashing in their eyes, contemplating other schemes. Nonetheless, no one truly dared to openly rob anyone at the ancient cliff, as this was a taboo among cultivators. Openly robbing others in the trading market was breaking the rules, equivalent to making an enemy. Of all the major figures who traded here, "Let's go stroll elsewhere," Qiye said with a smile. But before Qiye could leave, the old man hurriedly waved at him. Qiye smiled, stepped forward, and said leisurely, "What is it? Do you have more treasures you want to give me?" The old man grinned, chuckling as he said, "Treasures, well, that's not a problem. Heh, little fellow, I see you have extraordinary roots and bones, a celestial physique and a celestial fate. A prodigy hard to find in 10,000 years. This old man is unskilled, but my divine abilities are endless, and I feel a desire to take you on as a student. Why don't you consider it? Become my disciple, and this old man will impart supreme divine abilities to you. In the future, bearing the heavens will and sweeping across the 9 heavens and 10 lands will be no difficult matter." The old man's words immediately made Qiye burst into laughter. He looked at the old man and said, "No matter how I hear it, this sounds like a swindler. I have a mortal physique, mortal fate, and mortal wheel. Where does this talk of celestial physique and celestial fate come from? If you want to trick a child, find a stupider target next time. Mortal physique and mortal fate are no matter," the old man hurriedly said. "Throughout the ages, how many immortals and sages were of mortal physique and mortal fate, yet eventually reached the peak and achieved invincibility. Throughout the ages, those who achieved immortal emperor status with a mortal physique are not few. As long as the little fellow has the heart to seek the Tao, physique and fate palace are nothing. This old man will impart supreme divine abilities to you, shattering the shackles of your physique. Although your words are eloquent and immensely tempting, unfortunately, I am not interested. Qiye turned to leave. This time, the old man was truly anxious and hastily said, "Wait, wait. Little fellow, this old man truly cherishes talent and sincerely wants to take you as a disciple. Absolutely no deception. If you're afraid I'm tricking you, how about this, heh? These two great sage treasures will be our master-disciple meeting gift." With that, he grabbed the Great Sage artifact and the Great Sage longevity artifact from the ground and stuffed them into Qiye's embrace. This sight stunned Li Xuangan and the others. Any cultivator would yearn to become a disciple of such a master. If they could receive guidance from such an expert, their future would be boundless, and their cultivation would yield great results with minimal effort. For any cultivator of the older generation, taking on a disciple was a very serious matter. Forget profound masters, even vassal king-level experts were extremely picky when taking disciples. The old man before them was undoubtedly a deeply hidden master, yet now he was desperately begging to take Qiye as a disciple. Such a thing was truly rare. What shocked Li Xuangan and the others even more was that the old man offered great sage-level treasures right off the bat. And this was just a meeting gift. This was truly too extravagant, leaving Li Xuangan and the others speechless. Facing such an extravagant master, countless young talents in the world would probably be crying out to become his disciple. Becoming a disciple of such a master meant a lifetime of comfort and abundance. Yet, Qiye was completely uninterested, shaking his head and saying, "I'm not interested. You should find someone else to be your disciple." Haha, hey, think about it, think about it. Take the treasures first. Once you use them, you will understand their benefits. The old man was determined to give away the treasures, repeatedly pushing them into Qiye's embrace. "Your enthusiasm touches me, but I don't need a master," Qiye said with a smile, returning the two great sage treasures to the old man. The old man was speechless and couldn't help but say, "Hey, why be so absolute, little fellow? Becoming my disciple is highly beneficial to you. How about this? As long as you follow me, this treasure business is nothing. Name your price. What artifact do you want to be willing to take me as your master?" The old man's words were incredibly bold, showing he was willing to pay any price. "Fine, you find me 10 immortal emperor artifacts, and I'll take you as my master." Qiye glanced at the bold old man and said with a chuckle, 10 immortal emperor artifacts. Do you think they are just cabbages?" The old man's face immediately slumped. "Whether they are cabbages or not, I don't know." Qiye shrugged and said, with a smile, "That's your business. You think about it carefully." With that, he chuckled and turned to leave. Li Xuangan and the others couldn't help but smile wryly. Others would desperately want to take such an expert as a master, yet he treated it as a matter of no concern. "Little fellow, think carefully. I'll be staying at the ancient cliff for this period. If you change your mind, you can come back and find me anytime. As long as you take me as your master, good food and drink will be no problem." The old man was persistent, still shouting after Qiye's retreating back. Qiye walked away with a smile, shrugging, showing a look of complete disinterest. The old man's enthusiasm and sincerity made even Chen Baojiao unable to resist saying, "Young master, why aren't you willing? I see that this old man is unfathomably deep and definitely has a great background. The 9 worlds may be vast, but there is still no one qualified to be my master." Qiye said calmly, "Take someone else as a master? What kind of joke was that?" He had even nurtured immortal emperors before. He had cultivated beings capable of sweeping across the 8 desolations and 6 harmonies, an uncountable number. It was truly impossible to find someone in the world who could be his master. "But Master Su is your master," Li Xuangan deliberately provoked. Qiye The usually cold and aloof woman said this with a calm tone. Qiye glared at her, saying, "That was a coincidence." "A coincidence? Understand what a coincidence is." Qiye's expression made Li Xuangan and Chen Baojiao unable to resist covering their mouths and laughing lightly. The laughter of the two peerless beauties was truly magnificent, making countless people dizzy, running into walls without realizing it. Shigandong, following behind, could only let out a soft sigh. This was the difference. If it were him, with such a master offering to take him as a disciple, he would discard his pride immediately and prostrate himself. Such an extravagant master was rare to find in millions of years. Yet, Qiye treated it as nothing. Even with great sage artifacts as a meeting gift, his eyes didn't even twitch. This was a distance in the realm of life that he could never catch up to. "Why were you able to open the stone chest?" Thinking of the recent event, Chen Baojiao couldn't help but ask. This was truly too unbelievable. Although she had witnessed many unbelievable things following Qiye, she still couldn't resist asking. Chen Baojiao's question made Qiye pause. He sighed inwardly. Could he not open this stone chest? If he couldn't open it, could anyone else in the world? One must know that he had personally buried this stone chest himself years ago. That was a story. That is a secret. If I tell it, it won't be mysterious anymore, Qiye finally replied to Chen Baojiao. Chen Baojiao was naturally not satisfied with this answer and glared at Qiye angrily. However, Li Xuangan understood Qiye better. In that instant, she realized that the stone chest had stirred up some thoughts in Qiye's heart. But what those thoughts were, she couldn't possibly know. Qiye said to Li Xuangan, "Keep the six beasts formation diagram and the starry sky heavenly plate. Cultivate well. These two items will be very beneficial to you." Li Xuangan loved array formations. Qiye acquiring the six beasts formation diagram and the starry sky heavenly plate could be said to be specifically for Li Xuangan. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bothered to open the stone chest for the old man. "What about Sister Baojiao?" Li Xuangan asked in turn. She had quite a few artifacts. And she commanded the six Dao sword, whereas Chen Baojiao had no artifacts after leaving the Chen family. "These two artifacts are not suitable for her," Qiye shook his head and said. "When a suitable treasure appears, I will help her acquire one or two." Chen Baojiao knew when to advance and retreat and did not ask Qiye for an artifact. Although people like Nan Huairan had already been given artifacts, and only she hadn't, she still didn't press for one. She also understood that Qiye treated those close to him based on seniority and time. It wasn't strange that she hadn't been given an artifact, as her time following Qiye was far less than Li Xuangan and the others. What was inside the small golden coffin? Not long after walking, Li Xuangan, who always understood Qiye, couldn't help but ask softly. She had seen the item inside the stone chest. Clearly, the old man greatly valued this small golden coffin. To open the chest and acquire the small golden coffin, the old man didn't hesitate to exchange it for heavy treasures, great sage-level treasures at that. This was enough to indicate that the item inside the small golden coffin was earth-shattering, or that the small golden coffin itself was a momentous artifact. Bringing up the small golden coffin, Qiye sighed lightly, and finally just said, "It is something the common folk would never even dare to dream of." Qiye's answer was essentially no answer at all, but Li Xuangan did not press further. In fact, Chen Baojiao was also extremely curious. What exactly was inside the small golden coffin? Since Qiye wouldn't answer, she couldn't ask again. The ancient cliff was incredibly lively, with people coming and going, trading non-stop. Some sold divine medicine, some purchased rare goods, and others looked for people with predestined fate. All kinds of people could be found here. Compared to the small vendors on the streets of ancient city, the sellers at the ancient cliff mostly did not shout. If they wanted to sell treasures, they would simply place their treasures on the ground, sit there, and wait for buyers to inquire. However, there was an exception. In a corner of the ancient cliff, there was a stall set up. It was a medicine stall run by two people, an old man and a young girl. The old man shouted loudly to solicit customers, while the young girl lowered her head, seemingly arranging the medicinal herbs. Footprint, Tucian, old medicine shop, a signboard 3 million years old. Friends passing by, don't miss out. Soul medicine, beast marrow, lifespan blood, everything you need is here. Longevity medicine, fate pills, gold powder, nothing is missing. One dose extends life by 100 years, one pill perfects 9 roots, gold powder saves the dying. Prices are reasonable, good value. Look across the entire Middle Great Territory, no, look across the entire human emperor world, you won't find a cheaper medicine shop. The old man at the medicine stall strained his throat and shouted loudly. This old man had a somewhat comical appearance, a goatee, eyes like small beans, and a face covered in wrinkles. When he smiled and shouted, the wrinkles looked like rippling waves. Nevertheless, the old man's business was booming. For cultivators, whether it was longevity medicine or fate pills, they were consumable items. Furthermore, the alchemists of each sect were limited, and the disciples within major sects who could be allocated longevity medicine and fate pills were few. Therefore, many cultivators had no choice but to purchase longevity medicine and fate pills externally. Of course, longevity medicine and fate pills sold externally were not cheap. Only cultivators from major sects could afford to buy them. The old man's stock of longevity medicine, fate pills, soul herbs, and beast marrow was considerable, and customers were continuous. Do you have 5 transformation fate pills? How much are they? An ancient saint stepped up to the old man's stall and asked. 5 transformation fate pills. Yes, yes, yes. But only 3 remain. The medicine old man chuckled and said, 1 fate pill sells for 600,000 Saint Venerable Star Jaspers. 600,000 Saint Venerable Star Jaspers. Hearing the old man's words, the ancient saint was taken aback and said, Old man, you are too exorbitant. You might as well just rob people. A 5 transformation fate pill is only for ancient saints. You are selling it for Saint Venerable Star Jaspers. 600,000 ancient Saint Star Jaspers might be reasonable. The medicine old man's face did not flush or show any sign of distress. He chuckled and said, Taoist friend, you are an ancient saint, a rare powerhouse in the current age. You should understand this. For an alchemist, fate pills are the most difficult to refine. My fate pill has a success rate of 7 out of 6 attempts, Luke bien the tuc. It is absolutely a hot commodity. Refining one takes a lot of time, and collecting the required herbs and spirit medicines is not easy. Moreover, I dare to bet that among all the medicine shops in ancient city, few can boast such a high success rate. If I sold this kind of fate pill for ancient Saint Star Jaspers, wouldn't everyone rush to snatch it up? This ancient saint immediately fell silent. Although the price was extremely exorbitant, the old man was speaking the truth. For cultivators, a high physique and longevity medicine were somewhat easier to obtain, but fate pills were hard to come by, especially ancient saint-level fate pills, which were even harder. In the end, this ancient saint reluctantly pulled out his cosmic pouch and bought 1 fate pill. However, he was still very satisfied with the pill's 7 out of 6 success rate. This footprint medicine old man, Tuc and Duok Lao, truly had skill. He was definitely a master alchemist. Because of this, despite his outrageous pricing, his business was still particularly good. When Qiye passed by the stall, he couldn't help but stop. He was drawn to an item on the stall. This item was displayed in the most eye-catching position on the stall, with a special sign erected above it that read, Selling Family Heirloom Treasure. If it were called a family heirloom treasure, anyone would inquire, but this particular family heirloom treasure was something others probably wouldn't even ask. The price for the reason was simple, the object was just a piece of broken roof tile. This piece of broken tile was grayish-white and extremely crudely made. It even made people suspect whether this kind of tile was simply picked up from an old rooftop somewhere. If such a ragged piece of tile was considered a family heirloom treasure, then there were too many family heirloom treasures in the world. The footprint medicine old man specifically set up this display on his stall, wanting to sell his family heirloom treasure. Even customers buying his spirit medicine couldn't help but look at him strangely. Some customers couldn't help but ask, "Can something like this really be a family heirloom treasure?" Hee, this is absolutely a family heirloom treasure, no fake. The footprint medicine old man chuckled in response, "Taoist friend, would you like to buy it?" "Am I sick? Why would I buy a piece of broken tile?" A customer replied angrily to the footprint medicine old man. Clearly, the customer's words caused the young girl, who had been diligently arranging the stall with her head lowered, to stiffen momentarily. Others dismissed the piece of broken tile, and most customers thought the old man was just being comical. But Qiye was immediately drawn to this piece of tile. Qiye walked over, picked up the tile, and examined it meticulously, looking at it repeatedly, as if the tile were the rarest treasure on earth. Qiye scrutinized the tile in his hand, seemingly unwilling to miss any tiny detail. Hee. This brother is truly a connoisseur. He has eyes like a torch, absolutely. The footprint medicine old man saw Qiye immediately examining the tile and praised him loudly. "It seems this brother has an affinity with this treasure. Hurry up and buy it." Qiye examined it carefully, looked up at the footprint medicine old man, and said, "Is this your family heirloom treasure?" Hee, no. "No, it's my disciple's family heirloom treasure," the footprint medicine old man said, nodding towards the young girl arranging the stall. "Girl, you've met someone with discerning eyes. This patron wants to buy your family heirloom treasure." The young girl looked up. The moment she raised her head, everyone's eyes lit up. Although the girl before them was not as peerlessly beautiful as Li Xuangan or Chen Baojiao, she possessed a certain spiritual presence, as if she gathered the essence of heaven, earth, rivers, and mountains. Looking into her eyes, one felt an influx of spiritual energy. Her incredibly agile and expressive eyes seemed capable of speaking, reaching the deepest part of one's heart. The girl's complexion was pale. She wore simple gray clothes and no makeup, looking like a farmer's daughter, yet her spiritual aura was compelling. "Is this your family heirloom treasure?" Qiye looked at the girl and asked. The girl remained silent. Her incredibly expressive eyes looked at Qiye, then she nodded gently. Qiye lowered his head again to examine the tile in his hand. After a moment of contemplation, he looked up at the girl and asked, "Is your surname Yu?" As he spoke, he intently watched the girl's every subtle reaction. Upon hearing this, the girl's expression stiffened momentarily. Her incredibly expressive eyes looked at Qiye in disbelief, because Qiye had correctly guessed her surname in one go. This look on the girl's face gave Qiye confirmation. This brother is indeed extraordinary. Eyes like a torch, indeed, he. This treasure is truly destined for this brother, so brother, quickly buy it, the footprint medicine old man, seeing Qiye's interest in the tile, immediately urged him to buy it. Li Xuangan and Chen Baojiao couldn't help but exchange glances. To be honest, no matter how they looked at it, they couldn't see anything special about that piece of tile. It was just a tile. It held no precious qualities whatsoever. However, they both believed that Qiye's interest in this seemingly worthless tile must have a reason. "This is truly a treasure of a lineage," Qiye said, carefully looking at the tile one more time, and nodded. Only a fool would regard a piece of broken tile as a treasure. At this moment, a cold laugh rang out. It was Leng Qingfeng walking over, speaking mockingly. Leng Qingfeng rushed over here precisely to make trouble for Qiye. Leng Qingfeng's sudden appearance made Li Xuangan frown. She understood that Leng Qingfeng deliberately opposed Qiye. To be frank, she wasn't worried about Qiye. In her view, Leng Qingfeng provoking Qiye was simply seeking death. However, as fellow disciples, she didn't wish for internal strife, but if Leng Qingfeng was determined to seek death, no one could save him. Qiye didn't even bother to glance at him. He looked at the girl and said, "If it is your family heirloom treasure, why must you sell it?" The girl remained silent, not answering Qiye's question. The footprint medicine old man standing nearby, chuckled and said, "My girl is very pitiful. She is ill and urgently needs money for treatment. So, she has no choice but to sell her family heirloom treasure. So that's it. No wonder she's selling the family heirloom treasure." Qiye looked at the girl, then nodded, and said, "Such a cliché story, only an idiot would believe it." Leng Qingfeng said with a cold laugh, "Haha, selling a family heirloom treasure for treatment money. And it's a piece of broken tile. The people who believe this kind of story are fools." Leng Qingfeng's words immediately made the girl's face flush red, and the footprint medicine old man's face darkened. He said coldly, "Taoist friend, if you are not buying, then don't stand here talking nonsense. My footprint old medicine shop is a signboard 3 million years old. We only sell good merchandise." Humph. Being disparaged by the medicine old man, Leng Qingfeng immediately lost face. He sneered and said, "Fine, I'll buy it. Don't forget, I saw it first," Qiye said calmly, not angry. At this moment, he looked at Leng Qingfeng with a beaming smile. "Just with you?" Leng Qingfeng immediately felt disgust towards Qiye's provocation. He sneered inwardly and said to the medicine old man, "What is the price of your tile? I want it. Even if he bids, I will pay double the price." Leng Qingfeng was clearly antagonistic toward Qiye. He even wished he could kill Qiye. Therefore, he gave Qiye absolutely no respect. Qiye stole his sweetheart, a vengeance he swore to repay. Does this Taoist friend want to buy it? The footprint medicine old man clearly disliked Leng Qingfeng and asked with a chuckle, "Cut the nonsense, just name the price. I lack everything but money." With Li Xuangan present, Leng Qingfeng's fervor surged. He put on a show of generosity. He wanted to oppress Qiye until he couldn't breathe, make Qiye lose face in front of everyone, and let Li Xuangan know that he was the truly capable one. "Not expensive, not expensive. I believe this Taoist friend can afford it," the footprint medicine old man chuckled and said, "This family heirloom treasure only costs 10 ancestral sage star jaspers." Ah. The moment the footprint medicine old man spoke, Leng Qingfeng froze on the spot, unable to react immediately. In fact, the cultivators buying spirit medicine nearby also inhaled sharply. 10 ancestral sage star jaspers. This was truly a terrifying amount. Looking across the world, how many cultivators would never even encounter such a thing in their lifetime? The ancestral sage star jasper, in this world, was second only to immortal emperor star jasper in monetary value. Star jaspers were the currency circulated among cultivators. Each star jasper was formed by the condensation of heaven and earth essence. Moreover, besides being used as currency, star jaspers had great utility. They could be used to build Tao altars, open Tao gates, establish grand formations, and build heavenly caves. The ancestral sage star jasper was in existence just below the immortal emperor star jasper. This could be said to be the second highest denomination of currency for cultivators. Forget a single cultivator, even a sect might not be able to gather 10 ancestral sage star jaspers. This type of item was too precious. Are you joking? A piece of tile for 10 ancestral sage star jaspers? You might as well just rob people. A cultivator present couldn't help but say. Such a thing was truly too absurd. However, the footprint medicine old man's face became serious, and he said coldly, "This is not a joke. 10 ancestral sage star jaspers. Below this price, I absolutely will not sell." This made the cultivators present gasp. The old man before them sold 5 transformation fate pills, so he was definitely not a swindler. Furthermore, the spirit medicine and herbs on his stall were high quality. Since he stated this price, it was absolutely not false. What exactly is this piece of tile? At this moment, even the other cultivators who came for spirit medicine couldn't help but be puzzled. They fundamentally could not see how this tile was worth that price. Well, does our young master Leng, who claims to lack everything but money, still want to buy it? Qiye asked leisurely at this moment. If others opposed him, he wouldn't mind ruthlessly stomping on their face. Leng Qingfeng's face instantly flushed red. Especially under the gaze of so many people, he was momentarily unable to back down. He had just spoken boastfully, and the words were like spilled water, they couldn't be taken back. As the chief disciple of the Nine Saint Demon Gate, and with his master's doting, he possessed a large amount of star jasper. Furthermore, he had recently served as an envoy to the Azure Mystery Ancient Kingdom and profited handsomely. However, asking him to produce 10 ancestral sage star jaspers, he truly couldn't afford it. Moreover, spending 10 ancestral sage star jaspers to buy a piece of broken tile, unless he was insane. No matter what, he couldn't and shouldn't buy such a piece of tile. He simply couldn't afford it. Seeing Leng Qingfeng's flushed face, Qiye said with an exaggerated expression, "No way, didn't our young master Leng say he lacks everything but money? Just 10 ancestral sage star jaspers, to young master Leng, that's nothing. That's just a drop in the ocean. Since young master Leng doesn't lack money, buy it then." Against his enemy, Qiye showed no mercy. If others wanted to attack his dignity, he would ruthlessly stomp on their face until it was completely crushed under his heel. Leng Qingfeng was so enraged he trembled, his face extremely unsightly. His earlier boastful words could not be retracted now. Leng Qingfeng's face turned red. Finally, he glared fiercely at Qiye, coldly saying that, as if you can afford it. 10 ancestral sage star jaspers, even selling your entire cleansing incense ancient sect might not be enough to afford it. I indeed cannot produce 10 ancestral sage star jaspers, Qiye said with a leisurely smile. To be honest, for me, 10 ancestral sage star jaspers is truly a huge amount. Haha, a poor and destitute sect like your cleansing incense ancient sect probably hasn't even seen an ancestral sage star jasper. Forget the ancestral sage star jasper, you probably can't even produce a single Saint Emperor star jasper. It would be a miracle if someone as poor as you could even take out 10 star jaspers. Hearing Qiye's words, Leng Qingfeng immediately laughed mockingly, not missing the chance to ridicule Qiye. The customers present could all tell that Qiye and Leng Qingfeng were at loggerheads. The other cultivators naturally had no interest in getting involved in this mess and merely watched the show from the side. Qiye was not flustered by Leng Qingfeng's mockery. He remained calm and composed, slowly saying, "I am indeed a bit poor. Although I didn't bring many star jaspers in my pocket, that doesn't mean I can't afford to buy it. Xuangan, pay for me." With that, he instructed Li Xuangan. Li Xuangan said nothing. She simply took out a jade seal and gently placed it on the stall, saying, "Medicine old man, this is the largest treasured seal of our 9 Saint Demon Gate." The moment Leng Qingfeng saw Li Xuangan take out this item, his expression instantly changed. As the chief disciple of the 9 Saint Demon Gate, he naturally knew the significance of this item. A jade seal of this nature could authorize the largest expenditure of star jasper, medicinal materials, divine gold, and spirit stones of the 9 Saint Demon Gate. There were no more than 3 such treasured seals in the entire 9 Saint Demon Gate. One was kept within the sect, one was in the hands of Elder Jian, and the third was in the hands of the sect master. Seeing this jade seal, Leng Qingfeng knew exactly which one it was. Qiye glanced at Leng Qingfeng and said leisurely, "I am indeed penniless. However, since the 9 Saint Demon Gate is so hospitable, I don't mind playing the role of a prodigal son. I wonder if young Master Leng still wants to buy this family heirloom treasure. Should we perhaps hold an auction and see who offers the higher price?" His words were a brutal stomp right onto Leng Qingfeng's face. The 9 Saint Demon Gate needed to seek Qiye's help. If Qiye could successfully bury the War God Temple's patriarch, then for the 9 Saint Demon Gate, money was no object. If this matter succeeded, it would bring endless benefits to the 9 Saint Demon Gate, and the War God Temple would be the sect's strongest backing in the future. The Sunwill Demon Emperor was naturally generous toward Qiye, offering money if he wanted money, and materials if he wanted materials. It was just that Qiye was too lazy to take advantage of the 9 Saint Demon Gate. The Sunwheel Demon Emperor's jade seal was carried by Li Xuangan at all times. Today, since Leng Qingfeng foolishly came to provoke him, Li Qiye was naturally more than willing to ruthlessly stomp on his face. Leng Qingfeng was so enraged that his face turned pale, and his entire body trembled. He had once again suffered a loss at Li Qiye's hands. Suppressing a belly full of fire, he let out a cold grunt and turned to leave. If he stayed any longer, he would lose face completely. Madman. Seeing someone willing to spend 10 ancestral sage star jaspers to buy a piece of tile, even other cultivators shook their heads in dismay. As they left, they couldn't help but say such a thing. What kind of second-generation rich kid was this? He was worse than a prodigal son. Spending 10 ancestral sage star jaspers on a piece of tile was truly too excessive. Before purchasing the tile, Li Qiye looked at it one last time. Then, he looked up and said to the young girl arranging the stall, "How about a drop of fresh blood?" With that, he extended the tile toward her. The young girl couldn't help but look at the footprint medicine old man. The medicine old man nodded slightly. The girl didn't say a word, pricked her finger, and dripped a drop of fresh blood onto the tile. The fresh blood dripped onto the tile, slowly following a faint pattern before being absorbed into the tile. Li Qiye examined it meticulously once more, finally confirming that it was the genuine article. Taoist friend is truly a connoisseur, with extraordinary methods, the footprint medicine old man exclaimed in admiration, seeing Li Qiye's carefulness. He revealed a secret: my disciple's family heirloom treasure is an artifact granted by immortal Emperor Sun Devourer to her ancestor. If my disciple didn't need to purchase a large amount of medicinal materials, I'm afraid she wouldn't bear to sell this family heirloom treasure. An artifact bestowed by immortal Emperor Sun Devourer. Hearing this, Li Xuangan and Qin Baojiao couldn't help but be moved. A treasure bestowed by an immortal emperor was truly extraordinary. I know this, Li Qiye said with a leisurely smile. I can buy it, but I need a vial of her fresh blood. With that, he pointed at the young girl. The footprint medicine old man looked at Li Qiye for a long time. Since this tile was his disciple's family heirloom treasure, he had pondered over it for a long time, never figuring out its value. Now that Li Qiye was so sure, he was somewhat stirred. That is acceptable, the footprint medicine old man finally looked at his disciple. The young girl silently nodded, and the medicine old man agreed to Li Qiye's condition. Xuangan, pay him, Li Qiye said generously, collecting the tile and speaking to Li Xuangan. Li Xuangan didn't hesitate at all and immediately paid the footprint medicine old man. Of course, this expense was billed to her master, the Sunwheel Demon Emperor. Although she was the inheritor of the 9 Saint Demon Gate, she didn't have the authority to mobilize such a colossal sum herself. Leaving the stall, Qin Baojiao couldn't help but ask, "Is that an imperial item?" An imperial item from immortal Emperor Sun Devourer. An imperial item. Do you think 10 ancestral sage star jaspers can buy an imperial item? If it were truly an imperial item, even 10 immortal Emperor star jaspers would be worth it. Li Qiye said with a laugh. If it's not an imperial item, what is it? Li Xuangan couldn't help but ask. 10 ancestral sage star jaspers was not a small amount, even for their 9 Saint Demon Gate. Li Qiye said calmly. It's just a piece of tile. An ordinary tile that couldn't be more common. A piece of tile. Qin Baojiao couldn't help but be stunned, saying, You bought an ordinary piece of tile for 10 ancestral sage star jaspers. This was too much like bankruptcy. And what of it? If I deem it valuable, then it is valuable, Li Qiye said with a smile. Li Xuangan was now also moved. 10 ancestral sage star jaspers was no small sum. She couldn't help but say. Could it be that the medicine old man was lying just now? No, what he said was true. Li Qiye shook his head and said, this piece of tile did indeed come from immortal Emperor Sun Devourer's hands. However, it was when he was young, before he achieved the status of immortal emperor. He gave this tile to a friend. It wasn't bestowed upon someone after he achieved immortal emperor status. Li Xuangan and Qin Baojiao were both stunned. Spending 10 ancestral sage star jaspers on a piece of tile, and an ordinary, worthless tile at that, something that wouldn't even be picked up if thrown on the ground. If it were anyone else, they would definitely think Li Qiye was crazy. Then, does this tile have an earth-shattering origin? Chen Baojiao was somewhat bewildered. If 10 ancestral sage star jaspers were spent on a useless tile, that truly meant madness. It has no earth-shattering origin. To be blunt, Immortal Emperor Sun Devourer was a poor kid in his youth. It's no exaggeration to say he was penniless, so poor he couldn't even afford food. One day, he parted ways with a sworn brother he had grown up with since childhood. Being penniless, he had nothing to give his brother, so he peeled off the last remaining tile from his roof and gave it to him. Later, Immortal Emperor Sun Devourer joined the Flying Immortal sect and slowly rose to power, eventually achieving the status of an invincible Immortal Emperor. Li Qiye said leisurely, as if narrating a story. Hearing this story, not only Qin Baojiao and Li Xuangan, but even Elder Shi, who followed behind, was stunned. They had likely never heard such intimate secrets before. Immortal Emperor Sun Devourer once swept across the 9 heavens and 10 lands. He was not only an immortal emperor but also a generation's invincible immortal physique. His life was incomparably brilliant. His halo encompassing one era after another, but how many knew the hidden past of the invincible Immortal Emperor Sun Devourer? The past of Immortal Emperor Sun Devourer could not possibly be passed down. The world had no way of knowing it. Why did Li Qiye know it? This secret would likely remain unknown forever. Li Qiye naturally knew the past of Immortal Emperor Sun Devourer, because it was he who personally sent him into the Flying Immortal sect that year. He had initially wanted to keep Immortal Emperor Sun Devourer by his side to cultivate, but unfortunately, he owed the Flying Immortal sect a favor, so he had to give this promising talent to the Flying Immortal sect. Does this tile have any other use? Li Xuangan was still somewhat unconvinced and couldn't help but press for an answer. This was 10 ancestral sage star jaspers. Even though it wasn't her own money, it was the sect's money, and she couldn't help but feel a pang of heartache. Spending 10 ancestral sage star jaspers on a piece of tile was too extravagant, so extravagant it made her want to vomit blood. It's just an ordinary tile that couldn't be more common. If you think it's a treasure, then you're wrong. It has absolutely no effect on cultivators. Li Qiye smiled and shook his head, saying, "You are insane." Chen Baojiao couldn't help but complain. 10 ancestral sage star jaspers for a piece of tile. That's simply madness. There should be a limit to bankruptcy. You are wrong about that, Li Qiye said leisurely, that depends on whose hands it is in. If it were in someone else's hands, it would indeed be a useless piece of tile. But in my hands, it is a goose that lays golden eggs. How can it lay golden eggs? At this moment, even Li Xuangan was curious. What could an ordinary tile be used for? Although it came from the hands of Immortal Emperor Sun Devourer, this wasn't the era of Immortal Emperor Sun Devourer. If the Immortal Emperor were still around, bringing such a tile to meet him might work. Li Qiye chuckled and said, "I had originally intended to create a fake antique to bring into the ancient corpse grounds to scam the Earth Immortals, tricking the treasures out of their hands. Now that I have this tile, I won't need to spend so much effort creating a fake. Scamming Earth Immortals with a fake item." Hearing Li Qiye's idea, Li Xuangan and Qin Baojiao couldn't help but stare, utterly astonished. Such a thought was truly too insane. If this idea came from anyone else's mouth, they would definitely consider that person crazy, but because it came from their young master, it somehow seemed less crazy. Is this possible? Even Li Xuangan, who trusted Li Qiye the most, couldn't help but feel her confidence waver, saying, "Earth Immortals are buried in dragon lairs. They are existences that were once invincible, once at the absolute peak. Tricking treasures out of their hands with a fake item. That's impossible, isn't it?" Such an idea was too insane. No one else could have conceived it. "That depends on who is executing the plan," Li Qiye said leisurely. "If I were making a fake item, I would have 7 parts confidence. But with this tile in hand, I have full confidence." Moreover, I already have a target in mind. Li Xuangan and Chen Baojiao exchanged glances, immediately falling silent. No matter when, they always felt that such an idea was too insane, scamming Earth immortals. Even a great sage would avoid Earth immortals, let alone run up to trick them. Yet, their young master had come up with this method, which was crazy beyond belief. For anyone else, this idea was simply courting death. Gundong, following behind, also let out a soft sigh. What was a genius? This was a genius. It had nothing to do with aptitude or physique. Having insane ideas, doing the craziest things, and often succeeding. In dangerous situations, that was the true genius. The ancient cliff was very wide. The cultivators trading here were numerous, coming from the Middle Great Territory, the East 100 cities, and even the South Red Earth. The cultivators trading here included humans and demon race. It could be said that in the Middle Great Territory, cultivators of these two major races were commonplace. Besides the human and demon races, there were also cultivators from the celestial demon race and the stone golem race. At the ancient cliff, one could even occasionally see one or two cultivators from the ghost immortal race and the blood race. Seeing cultivators from the ghost immortal race and the blood race, Gundong couldn't help but exclaim in awe. Ancient city truly lives up to its name as one of the largest ancient cities in the Middle Great Territory. Even cultivators from the ghost immortal race and the blood race appear here. In the human emperor world, cultivators of the celestial demon race and the stone golem race were originally rare. They were not native races that originated and flourished in the human emperor world. Ever since the Black Dragon King's battle with immortal Emperor Sky Trampler 30,000 years ago, the 9 worlds collapsed, and the 9 worlds passageways were destroyed, preventing communication between the 9 worlds for these 30,000 years. Therefore, in the past 30,000 years, encountering cultivators other than the human and demon races was not a common occurrence. Li Qiye strolled through the ancient cliff with Li Xuangan and Chen Baojiao. Although there were many sellers of spirit medicines and treasures in the ancient cliff, truly few items caught Li Qiye's eye. They had wandered through more than half of the ancient cliff without finding any artifact or rare treasure that pleased them. However, as Li Qiye and his group wandered, gradually, some people began to point fingers at them. Most of these were young cultivators. Initially, Li Qiye and the others ignored it, but the situation slowly escalated beyond their expectations. Gradually, the cultivators passing by them were not just pointing but also whispering amongst themselves. Is that Qin Baojiao of the Precious Pillar Saint sect? As Li Qiye's group passed, a young cultivator intentionally slowed his steps, looking at Qin Baojiao with a strange gaze. Besides that shameless woman, who else could it be? A female cultivator companion said disdainfully. In fact, the malicious rumors were far more numerous, and they didn't just come from one group. It seemed that some cultivators were doing this deliberately. The Precious Pillar Saint sect is a well-known major sect in the Middle Great Territory, but now, the sect's reputation has been completely ruined by this shameless woman. Some young cultivators, upon seeing Qin Baojiao, deliberately lowered their voices to discuss. Exactly. She was clearly engaged to the sacred Heaven Dao child. Her ability to marry him was the good fortune she cultivated for 10 lifetimes. She clearly doesn't appreciate the good fortune she has, yet she still hooks up with someone from the cleansing incense ancient sect behind the sacred Heaven Dao child's back. Truly shameless. A female disciple said with a cold laugh, her words subtly hinting at jealousy and envy. Hearing this, the eyes of Qin Baojiao, Li Xuangan, and Li Qiye all turned cold. At first, Qin Baojiao hadn't paid it any mind, but some cultivators were doing this intentionally, repeatedly gathering near them and spreading rumors, which infuriated Qin Baojiao until her face flushed red. That shameless bitch. Being able to marry the sacred Heaven Dao child was the good fortune she cultivated for 10 lifetimes. She clearly doesn't know her own good fortune and still tries to seduce other men behind the sacred Heaven Dao child's back. If she were seducing a genius, that might be one thing, but she's seducing some nameless junior. Truly self-degrading and lewd. A young female cultivator spat from a distance, saying with a cold laugh. Although these people did not mention names, anyone listening knew they were talking about Chen Baojiao. Hearing this, Chen Baojiao trembled with fury, such harsh words making her body shake with rage and her heart ache with injustice. Someone is tired of living, Qiye said, his eyes narrowed. His voice cold, if I don't kill people, even the heavens will thank me. And yet, someone dares to provoke me. Undoubtedly, these slanderous whispers were deliberately spread, orchestrated by someone behind the scenes. They simply wanted to ruin Chen Baojiao's reputation. In the ancient cliff, finding the mastermind was not difficult. Qiye used a slight method and immediately knew who was spreading these rumors. On a balcony of the ancient cliff, a group of young talents was gathered, chatting and discussing loudly. The leader of this group was a young man, the inheritor of the Qi Mountain sacred land, the Qi Mountain Saint Son. Among this group of young talents engaged in loud conversation, more or less, intentionally or unintentionally, they were flattering the Qi Mountain Saint Son. In fact, this was not strange. The Qi Mountain sacred land was a well-known lineage in the Middle Great Territory. More importantly, the Qi Mountain Saint Son had sworn brotherhood with the Sacred Heaven Tao child of the Sacred Heaven sect. Today, the Sacred Heaven sect was flourishing like the midday sun. Countless cultivators willingly sought friendship with the Sacred Heaven sect. Moreover, there was recent news that the Sacred Heaven sect had formed an alliance with the Azure Mystery Ancient Kingdom, making the Sacred Heaven sect even more powerful. Just at this moment, while the young talents were chatting loudly, they saw Qiye leading Li Xuangan and Chen Baojiao walking toward them from a distance. A young genius raised his chin toward the Qi Mountain Saint Son and said, "Brother Qi Mountain, they're coming. I'm afraid they are looking for trouble with you." "Trouble? What's there to be afraid of?" The Qi Mountain Saint Son sneered, looking proudly at Qiye's group approaching. He said in a strange, mocking voice, "A promiscuous woman still has the face to run around with her lover. Hey. A shameless woman like her, daring to show up, is truly lowly and debauched." "What did you say?" Chen Baojiao trembled with rage. Naturally resolute, she immediately rushed forward and shouted. The Qi Mountain Saint Son acted as if he expected this. He looked around and said oddly, who was I talking about? Who is the shameless one rushing over here?" "Ah ha ha ha." The Qi Mountain Saint Son's words immediately drew a burst of laughter. Chen Baojiao's face flushed red, and her entire body trembled with anger. Courting death, Qiye stepped forward. A hand immediately slapped out. Where did this bastard come from, seeking death? Seeing Qiye's hand strike, the Qi Mountain Saint Son laughed loudly in disdain. He sneered and punched out with a fierce blow. Thunder rumbled. And the force of the punch was extremely formidable. One must know that the Qi Mountain Saint Son was at the heroic realm, of strength. In his view, an unnamed junior like Qiye was unworthy of the Tao. His single punch would be enough to claim Qiye's life. Clap. A loud sound as the palm and the fist met. However, the result was not what the Qi Mountain Saint Son expected. With a crack sound, under the crushing force of Qiye's palm, the Qi Mountain Saint Son's arm instantly shattered. Qiye's palm weighed 1,000,000 tons, easily crushing the Saint Son's arm. Bang. The Qi Mountain Saint Son screamed in agony. He was slapped away by Qiye. The sound of breaking bones rang out. Under that one slap, countless bones in his body were shattered, and he vomited a mouthful of blood. "Junior, you dare." The 3 vassal kings who guarded the Qi Mountain Saint Son had been nearby. Seeing their young master injured, they immediately rushed forward and shouted. The 3 vassal kings struck at the same time. In an instant, their royal aura was like a vast ocean, capable of enveloping everything. "Get back!" Li Xuangan shouted coldly, surging forth like an enraged lotus, untouched by myriad techniques. The 3 rushing vassal kings were dazzled. Before they knew what was happening, Li Xuangan instantly pierced through their attacks and struck them in the chest with a single finger. Bang! The 3 vassal kings were instantly sent flying backward, spitting out mouthfuls of fresh blood. Little beast. The Qi mountain saint sun crawled up, roaring loudly, and a battle axe flew out. The battle axe slashed across the air. Qiye didn't even twitch an eyelid. He raised one foot and stepped down directly. Bang. With a single stomp, the battle axe instantly shattered. It simply could not withstand the prison-suppressing god physique. Even a king weapon shattered the same way. The foot descended from the air, like a celestial steed trampling a sparrow, rushing down to stomp on the Qi mountain saint sun. Bang. A massive sound rang out. Regardless of what techniques the Qi mountain saint sun employed, using all his martial arts, Qiye's foot still stomped down. All techniques were shattered under that single foot. The strongest cultivation technique could not withstand the suppression of the world's heaviest physique. The Qi mountain saint sun was violently stomped from the air onto the ground. Crack. The sound of breaking bones rang out. Blood stained the earth. Under that single stomp, the Qi mountain saint sun had countless bones shattered, vomiting mouthfuls of blood. The grating sound of breaking bones made everyone feel their skin crawl. Anyone who heard that crunching sound of fracturing bones couldn't help but feel a tingling sensation across their scalp. Junior, how dare you? Seeing their young master trampled underfoot, the 3 vassal kings roared loudly. They cried out, each spitting out a sage artifact from their mouths, striking at Qiye from the air. Kill them all. Qiye only glanced coldly at the 3 vassal kings and slowly instructed. In a flash, Li Xuangan moved. Her unblemished physique instantly activated, all techniques failed to affect her, and all things failed to cling to her. A supreme sacred lotus burst forth. With one step, the 3 sage artifacts were instantly swept away by Li Xuanyan's foot, like torrents meeting a hidden reef. They either swerved or split apart, completely unable to strike Li Xuangan. For Li Xuangan, who had achieved the unblemished physique, a sage artifact was already too weak. Pfff. Her sword rose, the yin-yang moved. In an instant, Li Xuangan unleashed the 6 Dao sword. One sword became 6 paths, and the 6 Dao formed an array in the 9 heavens. Under the single strike, the peerless sword array formed. The yin-yang transformed into the array, melting heaven and earth. The 6 paths sometimes separated and sometimes converged, with the yin-yang shifting and transforming. Under one strike, brilliance soared to the heavens, and darkness locked the earth. Extreme yin and extreme yang were never meant to merge, yet at this moment, the 2 sword intents intertwined. Under this single strike, heaven and earth were refined. And the gods retreated. One sword transforming into an array, this was an extremely terrifying attack. The 6 Dao yin-yang sword array was a supreme killing technique Li Xuangan comprehended and created from the 6 Dao sword. Ugh. The 3 vassal kings fell silent in an instant, their eyes wide open. Then, fresh blood spurted from their throats, and their heads rolled onto the ground. Rolling far, far away. One sword cleaved 3 kings. Li Xuanyan's strike was utterly effortless. Back at Demon Back Ridge, Li Xuangan fought against several vassal kings alone. Today, her unblemished physique was even stronger. Furthermore, the 6 Dao sword in her hand was a treasure that even gods would shun. One strike to slay 3 vassal kings was an easy feat. In an instant, the entire area fell silent. All the cultivators present couldn't help but draw a sharp breath. The young talents who had just been chatting loudly were now terrified, cold sweat pouring down their bodies. One sword killing 3 kings, such a battle record was absolutely a heaven-defying existence among the younger generation. The so-called number 1 genius of the middle great territory was nothing more than this. Qiye's foot was planted on the chest of the Qi mountain saint sun. At this point, the saint sun's chest was completely caved in, and his entire body was covered in fresh blood. Qiye looked down at him and said, "What kind of death do you choose? My Qi mountain sacred land will absolutely not let you off." The Qi mountain saint sun was terrified out of his mind and screamed loudly. Qi Mountain Sacred Land. What is that? Never heard of it. Qiye said calmly. With that, the foot pressing on the already sunken chest slowly pushed down. The crunching sound of breaking bones rang out, and the remaining bones of the Qi Mountain Saint Sun began to shatter. The Qi Mountain Saint Sun let out a mournful cry. Screaming in horror, Saint Heaven brother, save me. Qiye, don't be arrogant. Just at that moment, a cold shout rang out. A sword strike descended from the sky, cutting straight towards Qiye. The sword swept across, cleaving the azure firmament. The sword intent was like a waterfall, and one strike seemed capable of cutting Qiye in half. Qiye didn't even look. Li Xuangan instantly stepped sideways. The six Dao sword was unleashed, and the six paths spanned the sky. With a clang, the attacking sword strike was instantly repelled by the six Dao sword. Humph. A cold snort, like rumbling thunder, sounded. Sacred Heaven Dao Child strode forward, his aura immense. Beside him were numerous young talents, including the saint sons and princes of various sacred lands and powerful nations in the Middle Great Territory. The unparalleled genius of the Middle Great Territory is still just that disappointing fate-severing marquis. Even after more than a year. Li Xuangan spoke with immense dominance, invincible in her eyes, aloof as a cold plum in the snow. Fate-severing marquis. Hearing this realm, countless cultivators secretly drew a sharp breath. Even older generation cultivators were stunned. Being conferred as a vassal king meant one was in the profound fate realm. Cultivators of this realm were commonly called vassal kings. This realm had 4 levels, each divided into 4 types of marquis, from lowest to highest: New Marquis, Tan Hao, Imperial Marquis, Hong Hao, Rebel Marquis, Engage Hao, and Fate-severing Marquis, Fa Men Hao. In the world today, even though the age of the Void Dao had passed, reaching the Fate-severing Marquis level at such a young age was absolutely astonishing. If someone reached this level at his age, he was not just a genius, there was no higher term for genius. Yet, Sacred Heaven Dao Child, despite being a Fate-severing Marquis, was still treated with such disdain by Li Xuangan. This was true overwhelming dominance. Long Xiangtian, you despicable villain. Upon seeing Sacred Heaven Dao Child, Chen Baojiao cried out sharply. At this point, even an idiot knew that Sacred Heaven Dao Child was behind this incident. Upon seeing Chen Baojiao, Sacred Heaven Dao Child's face grew cold. He let out a heavy, cold snort, his eyes flashing with icy killing intent. Oh, Brother Saint Heaven, isn't that the woman who once wanted to marry you? Just then, a talented youth beside Sacred Heaven Dao Child, wanting to curry favor, said sarcastically. Just a shameless woman I discarded, Sacred Heaven Dao Child said coldly, his expression icy and ruthless. His heart was filled with boundless killing intent. She was the woman he liked, his former fiancée, yet she would rather betray her sect than marry him, choosing instead to follow an unnamed junior. His heart was boiling with jealousy and rage, wishing he could kill this pair of despicable lovers. The talented youth immediately said mockingly, Brother Saint Heaven should not be merciful. A shameless woman like that is completely unworthy of Brother Saint Heaven. Humph, that kind of shameless woman can only seduce some bumpkin of a husband. Kill him, Qiye said coldly. Clang. Before Qiye's words even finished, a sword flashed. The moment the sword fell, a head flew up. The severed head opened its mouth, trying to speak, trying to scream as it saw its body, but it could not utter a sound. Only when the head rolled far away did fresh blood spurt out, and the body fell stiffly. You. Sacred Heaven Dao Child's expression changed drastically. Everything happened too fast, even he didn't have time to save his companion. Saint Heaven brother, save me. At this moment, the Qi Mountain Saint Sun, who was trampled under Li Qiye's foot, only had one breath left, crying out miserably. Junior Li. Release him, and I will spare your life. Sacred Heaven Dao Child took a step forward. Immediately, Imperial aura surged fiercely, like a Qilin stepping on the earth, causing even the ancient cliff to tremble. With just you. Li Xuangan was full of dominance. She took one step and blocked Sacred Heaven Tao Child, standing with her sword embraced, cutting across the sky, aloof as a cold plum. In the snow. Sacred Heaven Tao Child's face was utterly grim. He stared intently at Li Qiye and said coldly, "Junior Li, if you're a man, come out and fight. Stop hiding behind a woman. Come out and fight." Li Qiye chuckled. He stomped down with his foot. With a crunch, the head of the Qi Mountain Saint Sun was crushed underfoot. He didn't even have time for a final scream. "You." Sacred Heaven Tao Child was furious. His eyes blazed, instantly transforming into two beams of killing swords that slashed towards Li Qiye. Li Xuanyan's long sword swept across. With a clang, the two beams of sword light were immediately cut off by the sixth Tao sword. "Li Xuangan, do you want to fight?" Sacred Heaven Tao Child's face was ashen. With a boom, Great Sage Might instantly surged from his body. The sudden surge of Great Sage Might swept across the entire ancient cliff, causing many cultivators to be moved. At this moment, the cultivators present all realized that Sacred Heaven Tao Child possessed a Great Sage artifact. Whether it was a weapon or armor was unknown, but it explained why Sacred Heaven Tao Child was so aggressive this time. Fight, then so what? Li Xuangan remained utterly dominant. Even if Sacred Heaven Tao Child possessed a Great Sage artifact, she was fearless. The sixth Tao sword in her hand was far superior to any Great Sage artifact. The two sides faced each other fiercely, causing many observing cultivators to draw a sharp breath. The duel of geniuses was truly full of overwhelming dominance. "Junior sister, you must not engage in this battle." At this moment, Leng Qingfeng reappeared from nowhere and said in a deep voice, "Our 9 Saint Demon Gate cannot form an enmity with the Sacred Heaven sect. Junior sister must not ruin the harmony between the two factions. Ruining the harmony for a single brat. If the elders punish you, junior sister cannot bear the responsibility. My matters do not require guidance from senior brother Leng." Li Xuangan had completely lost patience with Leng Qingfeng and replied coldly. Li Xuanyan's words immediately made Leng Qingfeng's face sink, filling his heart with immense jealousy toward Li Qiye. He glared fiercely at Li Qiye. "Humph." Just then, a cold snort, like thunder, rang out. An old man strode in. It was the 9 Saint Demon Gate's Lei Shi. Lei Shi's arrival caused many observing cultivators to be moved. Someone secretly exclaimed, "The Grand Elder of the 9 Saint Demon Gate. An 8-star ancient saint." Seeing Lei Shi, Sacred Heaven Tao Child sneered and said to Lei Shi, "Elder Lei, this is not my Sacred Heaven sect wanting to be enemies with your 9 Saint Demon Gate. Rather, your 9 Saint Demon Gate is showing disrespect to my Sacred Heaven sect. If my Sacred Heaven sect declares war on your 9 Saint Demon Gate, don't say I didn't warn you. Xuangan, step back now. What kind of conduct is this?" Lei Shi shouted coldly. "This is a major matter for the sect. Are you, a junior, capable of deciding it? If you ruin the sect's great undertaking, you will be punished. Today's matter, you must apologize to Taoist brother Saint Heaven." Lei Shi's words immediately caused many cultivators present to exchange glances. Logically, the elders of every sect would usually shield their own, but Lei Shi's actions were completely unexpected. Lei Shi's words instantly turned Li Xuanyan's face cold, while Sacred Heaven Tao Child sneered continually. "Xuangan, make him scram. Otherwise, don't blame me for disregarding the Sunwheel Demon Emperor's sentiments and killing them all," Li Qiye said, his eyes cold, his voice slow. Lei Shi was instantly enraged and shouted coldly, "You little beast seeking death. Today, this venerable will properly discipline you." As soon as he finished speaking, his large hand, shimmering with 8 stars, reached out towards Li Qiye. Bang! The large hand didn't even touch Li Qiye before it was intercepted and repelled by someone who strode out. "Junior brother Lei, the matters here do not require your involvement," Qiyun suddenly appeared from nowhere and said coldly. As the senior brother, he directly displayed a cold face to Lei Shi. Qiyun's sudden appearance and his words immediately stripped Lei Shi of all face. Lei Shi's expression darkened, and he said in a deep voice, "Senior brother, you are interfering too much." Qiye was inwardly furious. He flipped his hand, revealing an imperial edict, and said, "Junior brother Lei, His Majesty's edict is here. Shall I escort you back, or will you go yourself?" Qiye was raging inwardly. Because of the war god temple matter, His Majesty was practically begging Li Qiye. His Majesty wished he could treat Li Qiye like a revered ancestor. If this matter succeeded, the Nine Saint Demon Gate would reap endless benefits. Lei Shi, acting out of self-interest, repeatedly sought trouble with Li Qiye. This was intentionally trying to sabotage the Nine Saint Demon Gate's great plan. How could this not anger Qiye? Seeing the imperial edict, Lei Shi's face became utterly grim. In other sects, the status of a Grand Elder might be very special, but not so in the Nine Saint Demon Gate. The Sunwheel Demon Emperor's aptitude was heaven-shattering. No one in the Nine Saint Demon Gate, except Elder Jian, had a higher cultivation level than him. It could be said that the Sunwheel Demon Emperor's status in the Nine Saint Demon Gate was one that no one could challenge. With the imperial edict out, the matter was concluded. Lei Shi's face was extremely unsightly. He said nothing more, turned, and left. Leng Qingfeng also did not wish to stay and followed him out. This turn of events caused many observing cultivators to secretly draw a sharp breath. It meant that the Nine Saint Demon Gate was absolutely determined to support Li Qiye, even at the cost of antagonizing the Sacred Heaven sect. "Do you have any other backing?" After Lei Shi left, Li Qiye glanced at Sacred Heaven Dao Child and slowly asked. Sacred Heaven Dao Child let out a cold grunt and said sternly, "Junior Li, a one-on-one duel. I alone am enough to kill you." He truly lacked the confidence to fight Li Xuangan. The time Li Xuangan had defeated him had always been a shadow in his heart. "You really think I only rely on women to eat?" Li Qiye chuckled and said, "What is your Sacred Heaven sect worth? It's no difficult matter for me to destroy your Sacred Heaven sect." Li Qiye's words made quite a few people feel they were too exaggerated. This was truly arrogant boasting. Such grand talk. "I am here, let's see how you destroy my Sacred Heaven sect." Thank you for listening to the story on KTN Storyverse. Please like and subscribe to support the channel.